some of you guys here already know, but for the influencer guests, I know that maybe the depth of why we do the things the way we do it might be not quite so clear. For example, like what we have the ignition switch on the left, and why all of our cars have to be the sports cars of their respective segments. Well, have a seat, Tanner.
This makes it much more intimate when we sit together.
Yeah. So, Tanner, you are a race car driver, TV host. You rallycross, X Games, regular rally. It's weird that regular race cars are the oddball for you. You like to go sideways. You like to be in the dirt. You like to be in cars.
Yeah, Tanner.
Go in the
Keep it dirty. That's really the motto. I grew up loving cars. Actually, the car that got me into cars, coincidentally, but not that coincidentally, was a 912V Porsche. My dad bought when I was 3, and I still have that car actually. But I remember the moment, and if any car enthusiast remembers the moment when they became a car fan, and that was I was 5 years old. We were in Denver. We were going from Colorado Boulevard to Hamden. It was a second gear right-hander, and my dad kind of took it in anger a little bit. It was a nice sweeping turn. I heard the tires squeal. I remember sitting in the sheepskin cut with the skin still on the seats in this yellow Porsche, and heard the sound of the tires, and was just like, I never heard that before. And I asked my dad what that was, and he's like, "Wow, the tires must be low. Don't tell your mom." And from then on, something hit, and I watched every single gear shift that he did. From then on, I could recognize any car from its headlights. By the time I was 6, which drove my sister absolutely freaking crazy. But it's something that gets in you, and so I've just been a fan of driving my whole life, and been fortunate enough at some point. I was studying to be a doctor, like Steven, but at some point derailed and went into racing and figured out the business of motorsport, and have fallen in love with the motorsport industry.
For the kind of motorsports you do, you've been tremendously successful, and obviously you contribute that to your driving skill, but I also think it had to do with your kind of business sense and knowing who to work with, where to go. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, for me, I don't come from an Andretti family or a well-known family or a wealthy family really, which is a lot of racers. That's how they get started. And so yeah, you did have to kind of go through the business of motorsport. My second job in racing was at Pikes Peak International Raceway selling sponsorship for the track, and that's just to learn why people spend money on racing essentially. But through the years, I have developed relationships with manufacturers. I've been racing with Volkswagen for a number of years, done many events with Porsche, have 3 Porsches of my own, and so even when I go with other manufacturers, I don't talk about that. But it's the world has moved towards alternate fuels, and so I've been racing EVs actually for a long time. Around the world in 16 different countries I've raced EVs. We've got the record for the longest Baja run in an EV, and this year I'm racing these 1,000 horsepower rallycross cars that go 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Oof. And they're and so when you race for manufacturers, it's inevitable that you're going to, hopefully, this is the way the motorsport world hopefully goes around, is you race things on the track that are representative of what they want to sell on the street.
That's a great topic that we can hit on in just a second. But first, what are your 3 Porsches that you have?
One is in Colorado.
Yep.
It's an RS America.
Okay. That's a 911 race car.
Yep, like the yellow one that's out there.
Yep.
That was a US only spec car. And then the yellow 912E, I still have, sits in the second floor of my house. And so basically,
the second floor?
Second floor is like a shrine.
Okay.
And that's also is a US only.
Yeah.
I think those are the only 2 US only cars made. And then the other one is a GT3, which is a 991 GT3.
Okay.
And that's in California. You need to get that out of Colorado.
Nice. That's a great collection of cars. And for those that don't know, 912 is basically a 911 with a smaller engine.
Yeah, I thought it was I grew up thinking it was the fastest thing in the world. It's like the slowest Porsche ever made. It's heavy, but it has a little engine.
Yeah. There's no. It's all about the fun. It's a momentum car, as we'd say.
Yeah, but it fits my palate. I found out yesterday.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna keep it.
That's good. So you've driven obviously internal combustion cars and electric cars, and you kind of briefly touched on the current types of cars that you're driving: high horsepower, big torque, very fast acceleration. Has your driving style changed to suit that sort of thing, or did they change the car to suit you?
I think with racing, they try to get the car to suit the driver as much as they can, but driving EV is different in racing. Not to be too nerdy on it, but we're all there. So it's like when you're driving on slippery surfaces and you get wheel spin, if you're in a combustion car that has 6 gears, say you're in second gear coming around a corner and you accelerate a little too hard on the throttle, it only goes up to the rev limit, and say the wheels are only spinning at like 45 miles an hour. So it's not too hard to lift off the throttle a little and get traction and go. With electric, when there's only one speed, if you are a little heavy on the throttle, that wheel speed could be 140 miles an hour, even though you're only going 20 in the corner. And so it can be difficult. You have to be much more gentle with the right foot with electric, is basically what it comes down to. In jumping cars, it's a different story, because I do a lot of jumping. Used to have the world record. We were watching a video yesterday. Used to have the world record for the longest jump in a Hot Wheels project, and we learned doing that jump that in the air, just like with a dirt bike, the more you accelerate, the more the nose comes up. The more you brake, the nose drops. And with an electric car, because you have so much speed under your right foot, you have to be super gentle in the air to not pick the nose up, get air under the hood, and then maybe
come back around.
the thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So you end up flying the car in a weird way, but it has a big influence.
I always say this, but please obey your local regulations.
I think we have a ramp.
I was just starting to say, don't get to do that, try that today. Yeah.
It's going to be super fun.
Yeah, that's wild. You mentioned earlier that like the manufacturers like to race these cars to kind of bring them out to the real world, to the audience here. And I'm going to make that connection right now.
Yes.
Porsche's raced for years. We started racing. We're a motorsports company. We make cars because we're a bunch of race engineers that need to make money and pay the bills. And so we make the cars to sell so we can race on the weekend. So in a weird sort of way, there's the common saying, race on Sunday, sell on Monday. We're the other way around. We sell on Monday through Friday so we can race on the weekends. And for electrification, we've started racing since early 2000. We had a hybrid 911, right? Then we had a hybrid prototype car called the 919. It was awesome. We're in Formula E, and we're currently racing a 963 in Daytona Prototype and in the World Endurance Championship. And these are all hybrid cars, except for the Formula E car, that's a fully electric car. And we've learned how to use like the driver's feedback controls. Like Tanner was saying, they try to make the car to suit the driver. We do the same thing. We know how our engineers and how our enthusiasts like to drive the cars, and we try to craft the touch points of the car to suit that. That's why we don't have one pedal driving, for example. Our drivers like to be able to use the gas and the brake. If someone gives you like a musical instrument and tells you you can only use one hand to play it, it's like, well, why? I have two hands. I want to use both hands to play it. Same way, if you have two pedals on the floor, you can both accelerate and brake and have that fidelity to control the pedals and the controls to the maximum effort, right?
Yeah.
Would you say, with your experience in motorsports as well, that we do a good job in connecting the two? I mean, you have a pretty sports car oriented Porsche fleet.
Yeah, it's scary time in racing, in my opinion. The manufacturers around the world are really pushing towards EV. I'm a big believer that motorsport has benefited us over the last 100 years. Everything that we take for granted in everything we drive, from seatbelts, disc brakes, everything about the car was developed through competition. If we didn't have motorsport, we'd still be probably in something that looked like a carriage,
right,
and didn't go very fast and wasn't very reliable. But so motorsport has changed our ability to go from A to B on the planet. And the fear is that, especially in this room, we know it's a lot easier to spend marketing money to make content than it is to go out and compete and possibly lose against other manufacturers. So we're at an impasse where a lot of marketing money is more devoted to content with most manufacturers than motorsport. Manufacturers make the motorsport world go around. They're the ones spending the big money. Thank goodness for companies that have their heritage and their DNA anchored in racing, like Porsche. to where they don't have a choice. Porsche has to race.
Yep.
That's the brand. It's what it's about. It's why you work here.
Yep.
It's why everybody here works at this company. Is because they got hooked in from this purity of competition and badassery. So it's thank goodness for brands like that and for Porsche to stick with that DNA, because when they go into the EV world, all of the engineering decisions that we learned about yesterday, which are complicated, but you can tell they're all rooted in that mentality of this is why we do it, because it's what's best.
Right.
It's not, we're gonna do this because it's less expensive to make, but then we're gonna put all these connectivity features in here and people are never gonna know.
Right.
This is what's under the skin. Things like center of gravity, balance, choices like you're talking about on how to use the braking system. These are the core things that you don't probably even hear from the salesperson at the dealership. You just have to know they're in there, or you're gonna feel them when you drive like we're gonna drive today.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is there's a big difference between a car that the harder you push it, the better it feels. The engineering decisions and the expense under the skin to make a car have the right things like balance and center of gravity. Those are expensive things.
Yeah.
But that's what it makes is an experience that you can't really put your finger on. Something feels right about it, and thankfully Porsche has no choice but to keep going down that road.
You mentioned how you felt when you were in your dad's 912.
Yeah.
Well, now you're 912, but when you were a little kid, and that's got kind of what got you hooked. I'd say that's not even a car enthusiast thing. That's just kind of like rose-colored glasses as you're growing up, as when you're a little kid. Like for example, for me and my sister, when we were young, we used to live in Ohio, and we moved out to LA, and we had a Dodge Aspen station wagon, and my sister and I would like lean or like lay on top of the rear seat, the bench seat, like Snoopy on top of his house. And you know, my sister's not a car person at all. She drives a minivan because she has 3 kids, but she still has fond memories of being in that Dodge Aspen station wagon on top. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That feeling of just like being coddled and taken care of. Our dad's driving, we're in the back, eating chips and watching the scenery go around. And I think that same experience applies in a Porsche from a driver's perspective, right? So you don't know why you feel good in the car. You just know that it feels right. And whether you're in a Macan, a crossover, or a 911, a sports car, you feel that same connectivity. I mean, we've got some Porsche owners here, you've been in Porsches, you know what that is. And it's really hard to convey that through marketing or through a commercial, that connection. Because it's only one of those things that once you do it, that you know.
Yeah.
And I think that you're gonna experience that same thing in the Macan today, just because, again, those same guys and gals that worked in engineering, the 911s, the mid-engine cars, our race cars, they're doing the same stuff for our SUVs and our crossovers and our sedans.
This may be a terrible analogy, but always good to start a sentence like that. I was doing a show with a comedian, Adam Carolla, and we were in the editing bay. This was a version of Top Gear that never aired. It was on NBC, and they have these super expensive NBC network editors and everything, and he's a comedian, and he went in there and they gave him just a few minutes to cut up one piece that they had been doing. We watched it 8 times. It was kind of a chuckle moment. We were bungee jumping a car off a bridge. Anyway, as you do in Top Gear, and he just made a couple adjustments. He added one little pause after one sentence, and then he ran one sentence out just a little bit longer, watched it for the 9th time, and everybody laughed out loud. And it was this, we have this thing about the sense of humor as like this mysterious thing. Some people just have this gift of the sense of humor, some people don't, but there is a mechanical, there are mechanical rules that are unwritten that make things funny.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird, but that's how it is. But that's what the feeling that you get from a Porsche driving it, there are engineering decisions that are known. This will make it feel like this and will make it better. This will also make it faster. And those are engineers, they're decisions that are known. You just get behind the wheel and most people just feel like, oh, it really turns well or something like that. But there are very definite engineering decisions made.
Yeah.
Usually those decisions are expensive to make the car feel better.
Exactly.
Which is why most manufacturers don't go down that road. But when it comes together, it's seamless. You can't put your finger on exactly why it feels right, but it all kind of comes together. There's no like lines in the experience. It's not compartmentalized. It's just a fun experience. That's what a lot of people attribute to. It's like it's a fun car to drive.
So you talk about experiences. Can you remember off the top of your head the most recent kind of like not surreal necessarily, but really connective experience that you've had in the car when you're driving, where you're like, oh man, this thing is it, or I can't believe I survived, or something like that?
I mean, yeah, can't believe I survived thing happens a lot. But my folks are so happy that I got in this industry. Well, I mean, the Hot Wheels jump, I didn't tell my mom about it until she watched it live. But there's...
Hey, mom, come on out.
Really great.
What are you doing?
There's a car that we walked through yesterday that brought back some memories, and I used to do a TV show on ESPN called Import Racers. And there was a guy who had a career GT, and he just loved being on camera. And so we bring him on camera and interview him and stuff like this, and then the byproduct was we got to use his car for everything. And that car was so purely visceral, and you know, it's got the wooden shifter up on the console, which when you first get in, it's like, huh, that's an interesting choice, and there's no traction control, no stability control. And once you start moving and you start driving aggressively, your hand just falls right where the gear shift happened to be. And you start sliding it around. You know, like when you drive a go-kart and you slide it and you have a big save in a go-kart, it's like, man, why can't a car just feel comfortable the first time you slide it? And that's what this car did. Just the balance and the sound of a naturally aspirated V10 screaming to whatever 9,000 RPM. And there's just this emotional experience that can't help but demand your respect. And so for me, a supercar, a lot of people talk about what is a supercar. For me, anytime you drive a supercar and you don't feel like you kind of got away with something, you know, that you had to pay attention. Like when the phone rings, you leave it because you know one sneeze and you could drive off the road. It's just such sensitive steering. That kind of demand of your attention for I think I might be just lazy. But when I am involved in stuff, flying planes, driving cars, stuff like that, where you have no choice but to focus, that's when I feel the most focused and feel the best and get the flow. And
Clarity, your mind's clear.
Totally. Everything else has to go away. And there's almost like a survival situation where if you don't focus right, then you can be in trouble. And I love a car that demands that from you as a driver. That's not practical for every A to B. But a car that can step up to that level and push your human condition to that point, it's therapeutic. And so that is a great part of getting a chance to go on a track, is you can push yourself to that limit to find that flow.
While following all local regulations, of course.
No ramp-to-ramp jumps through fire hoops or anything.
If you could change anything about the driving experience, what would that be?
If I could change anything about the driving, just in general.
In general.
Oh God, Calvin, you know, we didn't prep this question. It's like not fair. If I could change anything about the driving experience, first of all, there would be nobody in the left lane.
Left lane for passing.
That's right. I've been fortunate to race around the world and sample driving from different places, and so I guess maybe I'll just take some things from different places. Germany, the roads. You never have a doubt at high speed coming around a corner if there's going to be some sort of dip that will upset something. Everything is designed for very, very high speed, so you can have confidence that the road is ready for the speed you're going. Italy, for the dance of driving, the only law they obey is the law of momentum. So whoever's going faster gets the right of way. And I love that. Everything just comes from the windshield. You don't have to worry about anything else. But if I was going to change the driving experience, I think that in cars, the other thing about Germany though is that you notice people pay attention. Because they're used to having somebody come up on them at double the speed. So I would think once you get in the car, whoever is driving would almost be isolated and need to have the experience be enough that they, I have a daughter who has a driver's license, and I notice when she gets in the car, that's when she's ready to do what a lot of us do, is that's when she gets her phone calls done, that's when she gets, touches base with everything. The traffic light is when she starts swiping, and once I made her drive a manual transmission, that went away because she was worried about stalling it at the light, and you know, with watching, okay, that one's yellow, okay, here, and now's my moment, I gotta get the biting point, you know, she's thinking and she's involved in it. And just that difference between having an automatic to a manual brought her into the experience so much more and made her much safer.
Yeah. Like you said, she's now focusing on that specific task.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the actual short answer to your short answer would be training.
Training?
Yeah, I think everybody should get out on a track that's icy, everybody should get on a wet, slippery track, everybody should get on a high-speed track, feel momentum, get used to drifting, feel what's on the other side of that mysterious line from the slide, and understand the physics, and maybe pull the veil from the mystery and understand that it's, you know, can be predictable.
I totally agree. I mean, that's the best way to learn about the car. I mean, that's why we have the experience centers here, to give our customers and potential customers that opportunity to kind of push a little bit and not have to run afoul of the law. I'd argue that, you know, to really truly get the full Porsche experience, a visit to a track or an experience center like this is kind of necessary, right? Because I mean, it's like buying a stereo and you never turn it past the middle point of the volume. Every once in a while, you should be able to crank up that stereo all the way and listen to it at full volume.
I agree, and there's a lot, you know, there's always a question of, you come from the aftermarket world, right? And like getting more power,
Yeah.
you know, wheels for looks and things like that, but training yourself is probably the biggest performance improvement you can do to a car. And then, you know, and then things like seats and,
Yeah.
and then power and brakes.
Sure.
Yeah, but being understanding what you know, those 4 little contact patches do and how to utilize them is critical, and it makes it more fun.
Yeah.
And it makes A to B more fun. It doesn't make sitting in traffic any more fun, but I think you start to appreciate your craft and you take ownership of your skills, and maybe explore going on the track more often.
You're making me want to talk about contact patch and suspension kinematics, so that's my cue to stop it right here. Do you have any questions for Tanner or myself about driving? But yeah, please.
Yes, I do have 2 questions.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for coming, and I love you, and I watch your I watch your YouTube always. Thank you for bringing the top tiers to us. First questions, bring back about Mulholland Drive.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yes. What makes you prepare for the race, and what's the difference between driving on the street versus driving on a course, and what's your thought afterwards?
Now Mulholland, you mean the video?
Yeah, the video, yeah.
So let's give some background for people here. Mulholland, that video that he's talking about, Tanner, you drifted a car on a long section of twisty road in Southern California. How long was that, Mulholland?
It was 2 miles.
2 miles?
The snake.
The snake, yeah. Oh, that part
Yeah.
of it.
That was the snake, yeah. That was all part of the. That was all part of the. Sure. That was all part of the marketing side of things, because when we started drifting, it was like, okay, how do we apply this stuff for street cars? So we took the drift car out on the street, and we're gonna do a whole video series of that. Mulholland's a famous stretch of road. Jay Leno goes there all the time, meets up, and is it the Rock Store? Yeah.
Grocery.
I drove it several times slowly, and kind of, again, from spending a lot of time sideways, you can kind of visualize how long each drift's going to last, how much speed you need to carry through this. And then we started placing cameras on where it would be a good time to touch the bumper. At this time, a friend of mine, Ken Block, had just finished the Gymkhana 1 video, which I had taken him to a Gymkhana event at El Toro, because do you remember who was the drift judge who had done that event?
Oh, the Japanese guy?
Yeah. You remember it?
Yeah, I remember. That was many years ago.
Yeah, so he was like started Gymkhana in El Toro at this Marine base. I took Ken there because I was taking Ken to ice track and stuff, and we were doing rally racing together. He used my car that I was racing at the time, and then he's like, "Hey, can I just rent this place out and just pull a handbrake at 100 miles an hour and just film it and see what it looks like?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And hooked him up, and he did the deal, and that was Gymkhana 1. So then we all had to change the way we marketed ourselves. So then we went into this whole street driving thing, and one thing about Gymkhana that some people didn't like is how many practice runs you could see the skid marks. So we were like, we're going to do this whole run on the first try kind of thing, and to make sure you can see that there's only one set of tracks. So that was the goal with Mulholland. But yeah, it was a NASCAR powered car. car. It was back when drifting was really trying to figure out what was happening in the U.S. and it was fun. Again, my daughter was just getting her driver's license, and all her friends were getting phones instead of driver's licenses, and so my task was, how do we keep driving fun for 15-year-olds so that they want to keep doing it and start taking ownership in their skills. And so that's why we did videos like that. I thought drifting was one of the most fun things you could do. That's why in the TV shows we're always about having fun with cars and enjoying driving. But yeah, that's what that video was about.
Any of those original marks still there?
They were there for 4 months. I got blacklisted from the California Highway Patrol.
I was going to ask, how did you do it? You just didn't do it and without permission?
No, we got police. Yeah, it's like
They don't. The thing is, they don't know what you're doing. They just know you're closing off that section of road
Hey, they're
to film a car
too.
video.
They
Yeah.
love it. They're just like they're out there
Yeah.
and like cheering. Like they absolutely love it. The police officers that were there. But then I guess a couple more rentals of the road. There was a Chevy commercial. There's some other commercials that got canceled because of the skid marks. And then that's when I got blacklisted. So,
It's all your fault.
yeah. Shoot in LA or in San Diego for a while after that. But yeah, valid question.
Because that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. Yep. Let's see. You're 3. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, I don't remember what year that was. It was probably
2017.
17. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you're on it. That was not that long ago then.
Yeah.
Are you still blacklisted?
2017?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it was
2007. 2007.
Seven, yeah.
2007.
That sounds-
Sorry,
that
sorry,
sounds
sorry.
right.
My fault. My fault.
Okay. If there's no more question, another one. Okay. Go.
I'm sorry. In 2014, you beat the great Ken Block in Gymkhana. And what
Yes.
prepares you? And what's your thought after that?
It was his event.
Yeah.
Twice. Yeah, he had 2 Gymkhana events. I won them both, and he wasn't super stoked on that. And there's supposed to be another one coming, and so I still have some of our old rallycross hardware cars and stuff in anticipation of that new one coming. But I guarantee you, an electric car will win it this time. Just with the torque and the center of gravity and the balance that electric cars can have, such a big advantage. So that will be a changed event. But yeah, Gymkhana, that was part of X Games for a year. I loved his vision on the stuff that he did. Ken was a master.
Ken's great.
Of marketing
Yeah.
and a great driver. But but yeah, that was an interesting conversation after that. I think it had a couple F-bombs in it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I don't want to keep you guys from the rest of your day.
I have one
yeah,
question.
please.
Yes.
Did you worry your daughter and then driving too fast and endanger your heart?
Yes.
I'm
the answer
worried
to
too,
that.
but the Porsche give you safe.
Yeah, she drives too fast. She does. And I don't know what it means if your dad races cars, if you can just lean back and say, oh, it's a genetic thing. It's not. It's not it. She's just spicy.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. But she's a good driver. She's been through all the schools.
Your DNA good.
Yeah.
Good DNA.
Yeah, the DNA doesn't help you sometimes. It leads you down some bad paths. There's she's been on ice driving schools. She's been race driving schools. She's had drifting carts since she was 4. She's pretty talented. But we were talking about this yesterday. Coming from a biology background, I think of everything from a human standpoint, a physiological standpoint, and basically all the skills that we're given as humans to survive on the planet and that we've developed over the last several thousand years, none of them really help you in a car. And there's really only one instinct that we have that works in an emergency situation, and that's in a skid, you tend to steer into the skid. That's only part of saving that skid, and it can make it worse if you hold that correction too long and you spin the other way. But that's the only instinct that we have, and I've ridden with thousands of people in emergency situations, essentially. So you have to replace the instincts that we have that are really for running through the forest at 7 miles an hour. You have to replace those instincts with proper technique. And the way the eyes work, the way they lock on ledges and edges and stuff when your head's shaking, all that stuff has to be, you can't rewire it. All you can do is code over it with proper technique in the stressful situation. But there'll always be a stress point where somebody's natural instincts come out. And the more training you have and the more muscle memory or the more repetition, the higher stress and you can handle before those bad instincts come to the surface. So I teach her that from understanding her limitations as a human, and she still scares the crap out of me.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, cool. I think that's it for us today, and who's taking the group to the next module, I believe? Sam. Thanks, and have a great day.